stated in history, and you hear this a lot, that when Imam Hussein alayhi salam was heading off towards Kufa, he left from Medina to Mecca and then from Mecca towards Kufa. There was someone that was coming from Kufa towards Medina, and on the path they crossed paths. They met each other. This person was a poet by the name of Hazrat. I'm sure a lot of you have heard his name. When they met with each other, it said that Imam Hussein alayhi salam asked him about the conditions of Kufa, what's going on in Kufa, are the people with me or are they not with me? He asked him a few questions. The answer that Hazrat gave him shows the hypocrisy of the people of Kufa. He said, Qulub an-nas ma', the hearts of the people are with you. Wa asghirhum ma Bani Umayyah, but their swords are with Bani Umayyah. So their hearts are with Imam Hussein, their swords are with Bani Umayyah. What is hypocrisy? What does being a hypocrite mean? It means that what you believe internally, what you are inside, is different than that which is presented outside. So the actions which you perform do not conform to the belief which you have. This is a hypocrite. Two-faced, two-sided. Someone who's inside disagree with their outside actions. So the people of Kufa were hypocrites because they're on the inside, at least according to this poet, they had love for Imam Hussein. But on the outside, they were willing to fight against him. Now you might say that, how could that happen? If somebody loves somebody, how could they fight against this person? Well, that would be a good question. Because if you truly love someone, you would never fight against them. So there's the fact that they did fight against Imam Hussein alayhi salam shows that their love was not true love. Their love was not at the level where they would need to be. But that's another discussion. So we're going to stay, inshallah, and talk with about hypocrites, inshallah. Salat, salawat, ala Muhammad, wa also, these last couple of nights, we have to give it our all. As I said yesterday, it's only tonight and tomorrow night. Tomorrow night is the last night. We only have 2 nights left. So let's try our best to make these 2 nights count. And for me, everyday speaking, towards the end, every day gets a little more difficult. So from you, what I need from you guys, if you can help me with giving loud salawats and being more energetic, will make the process a little better. Now, hypocrite, munafiq, this is hypocrisy, is an important subject in Islam. It's so important that Allah named one of the chapters of the Quran, Surah Munafiqun, the chapter of hypocrisy, Surah Hypocrite. And in this surah, he describes different issues regarding hypocrisy. So this is something that that's very interesting. This is something that it's necessary to talk about. It's necessary to look and figure out what Allah wants to tell us about hypocrites. Why does Allah mention them in the Quran? Why are they given such importance? Right? It's everything Allah does, there's a purpose behind it. He's the all-wise, He's Hakim. There's not one letter in the Quran that's unnecessary. So everything has a purpose. So let's look at this. I don't have time, I can't go over all of the verses of this surah and give a tafsir in one night. That's impossible. But we'll look at the first verse. Inshallah, from there we'll listen to a couple of hadith and we'll try to put everything together. And inshallah we'll get a little understanding. The first verse says this. It says, إِذَا جَاءَكَ الْمُنَافِقُونَ قَالُوا نَشْهَدُ أَنَّكَ لَرَسُولُ اللَّهِ. If the hypocrites come, they'll tell you, they're talking to the Prophet, we bear witness that you're the messenger of Allah. So the hypocrite comes, he tells the Prophet, we bear witness that you're the messenger of Allah. وَاللَّهُ يَعْلَمُ أَنَّكَ لَرَسُولُ. And Allah knows that you're the messenger. Allah knows this. وَاللَّهُ يَشْهَدُ أَنَّ الْمُنَافِقُونَ لَكَاذِبُونَ. أَنَا مُنَافِقِينَ لَكَاذِبُونَ. And Allah bears witness. Now when Allah bears witness, there's no chance of it being wrong, 100%. Allah bears witness that the munafiq, these people are liars, that they're not telling the truth. That they say, we accept you as our messenger, as our prophet. But they're lying, they don't. This is the first verse. Now there's a number of groups at the beginning of Islamic history of hypocrites. So not every hypocrite was the same. There were different types of hypocrites. There were different reasons why somebody became a hypocrite. And I want to explore these for a few minutes, inshallah. The first group are people who they were either born into Islam or they had to convert into Islam for a social reason. But they never accepted Islam with their heart. Now there's two groups that are like this. This will be the first one. These people, why? They thought that Islam somehow puts their desires or their personal gains, their interest in danger. It harms them. If they accept Islam and act 100% in accordance to Islam, they won't get the things that they want. So they have an animosity towards Islam. They dislike Islam because they're forced to be Muslim in the environment that they're in. But they see this as something that harms them, and something that keeps them down. Now I'll give you an example. There's a person by the name of Abdullah ibn Ubay. Abdullah ibn Ubay, we know the Prophet was born in Mecca. We know Islam started there in Mecca. And then two tribes were in Medina. There were two tribes, the Aus and the Hazrat. And these tribes were fighting with each other. For hundreds of years, they had a war with each other. And they got tired. At that time, they were tired of fighting with each other. They wanted to find somebody who could bring them together and bring peace to them, and thus make Medina, which was called Yathrib at that time, a livable place. So they had two plans. They made two plans to have this happen. One of them was to have Abdullah ibn Ubay become the governor of Medina, and he will bring the two tribes together. Their second plan was to go to Mecca, convince the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, convince the Prophet to migrate to Medina and create an Islamic government which would bring these two tribes together. So they chose the second one. They chose to go, and they met with the Prophet a couple times before the Prophet decided, through Allah's command, to migrate towards Medina. Now Abdullah ibn Ubay, if the Prophet didn't come, he was going to be the governor. He was going to be the person who calls all the shots. He was going to be the president, or whatever you call it. So he had an animosity towards Islam. He saw that the Prophet came to Medina and took away my position. I would have been the leader. But now the Prophet is. I'm forced to accept him, because if I don't accept him, I lose everything. I'm forced to accept him, but I don't like it. I don't want that. He puts my livelihood in danger. He harms my livelihood. This is how he saw it. He's a hypocrite. Alhamdulillah, none of us are like that. But this is one group of hypocrites. Now, while I'm discussing the hypocrites, I want to make it a little practical in our lives as well. So, I'm going to mention a couple of examples here which occur in our life. And see if we fall into hypocrisy or not. Now don't worry, hypocrisy has levels and degrees. So even if you have a small amount of hypocrisy or nifaq in your beliefs or in yourself, that doesn't mean that you're a terrible person. It just means you have something to work on. Which everybody, all of us have something to work on with ourselves. Now, the examples I'm going to mention, they could apply to this one or the next one. Having microphone problems today, huh? Now the two examples I'm going to give, they could apply either to this first group of hypocrites or the one I'm going to mention in a couple minutes. So they could apply to either one. Now, what I want to talk about is people who pick and choose between following Islamic laws. So we have in Islam, we have a whole list of laws. There's a book, the Tozi Masal, there's a list of laws in this book. There's question and answers on the Majlis website. There's plenty of laws that we have in Islam. All of us know this. Now, some people think that not all of these laws are for me. I'll follow the laws that I agree with, and the laws I don't agree with, I'm not going to follow. Some people, this is one type of person. Another type of person says that all of Islamic laws, they're all from Allah, they're all wajib, I have to do all of them. This is the second person is the correct person. So if the first person is there, and he's picking and choosing, he's saying that this law makes sense to me, this law doesn't. This law is difficult, this law is easy, so I'll do the easy one, stay away from the difficult ones. Let me give you an example. One example is shaking hands. In the West, part of the Western culture, when you meet somebody, they want to shake your hand. More so in America, less so here, but here it exists as well. So when you go to an office and you meet a woman, for instance, a man goes or a woman goes and meets the person of the opposite gender. It's customary in this society for these two people to shake hands. Now we know in Islam that it's haram for us, for my skin to touch the skin of a woman who's not one of my mahram, who's not mahram. It's haram. Even if it's some business meeting, even if it's impolite, even if it's awkward, even if it makes me uncomfortable or it makes the other person uncomfortable. In any one of these cases, the laws of Islam supersede. A law is more important. Is breaking Allah's law, committing a sin, more important, or making somebody uncomfortable? You have to follow the Islamic law. I remember when I visited a masjid once, and the president of the mosque, one of the head people of the mosque, I went with him, we had a meeting with a woman, a non-Muslim woman. And when we got there, she was a lawyer. When we got there, she stuck her hand out to the brother. And he shook her hand. I said, how could that be? And then she sticks her hand out to me. And I said, sorry, according to my religion, I can't shake your hand. Sorry. And she wasn't uncomfortable at all, but she thought, well, why did he shake my hand? And you didn't shake my hand? If this person didn't shake his hand at the beginning, and I didn't shake her hand, it would have been a lot easier. But because some people shake the hands, other people don't shake the hand, everyone's confused. But this is one thing that we have to pay attention to. Now there's ways around it. You could wear gloves, you could, wear a Band-Aid on your hand. There's a lot of tricks you could use. But of course, the best thing to do is just say, look, according to my religion, we can't have physical contact. This is, it doesn't mean we can't talk to each other. It doesn't mean we can't have a work relationship with each other. We just can't have physical contact. And most women accept that. Most men accept that. So this is just one small pointer. So if people who know that shaking hands is haram, but do it anyway, these people have to look at themselves and see why. Is it because they have a small disagreement with Islam? Or is it just some uncomfortability? Whatever it is, you have to look at it and try to uproot that problem that you have. So that's one. I hope you don't get upset with that. But salawat ala Muhammad wa Second example is hijab. The women have to wear hijab. This is something that's clear. There's no doubt about that. If a woman doesn't wear hijab while she knows it's wajib, then that means that she's openly, because when she leaves the house, it becomes an open sin. She's openly committing sins against Allah in front of people. And that becomes a lot worse. When you commit sins in private, it's bad. When you commit sins in open, this badness is multiplied. It intensifies. So if the sister is not wearing hijab, that means that she has a serious problem with her belief. And it's something that one should think about. So the sisters in the other room, inshallah, if you're not wearing hijab, seriously think about wearing one. And you can talk to the sisters who do wear them and get information from them, advice from them, inshallah. Salawat ala Muhammad wa So we're talking about different categories of hypocrites. First category was those who thought that Islam would put their livelihood in danger somehow. Second category are those who sincerely become Muslim. Sincerely they become Muslim. They propagate their religion. They love Islam. But then after a short period of time they realize that the social status that they had before Islam has disappeared. And now they're nobodies in the society. And they don't like that. And because of that, this animosity against Islam grows in their hearts. An example, there's a person in the beginning stages of Islam by the name of Ibn Amr. This person, before Islam, he was from Medina. He was one of the heads of the revealed religions in Medina. Then this person became Muslim, sincerely became Muslim. He accepted Islam. And then he saw that this social status he had, because he was a scholar. So people would look up to him. People would spend time with him. He was important in the society. But when he became Muslim, he lost that. He just became a normal Muslim like everyone else. And his social status fell. When this happened over time, he decided to turn away from Islam. Or not become he did. He was, if you guys have heard, in Sur Toba, there's a masjid called Masjid al-Darar, the masjid of misguidance. He was one of the ones who founded this masjid. And then when his hypocrisy was revealed, he fled Medina to Mecca. When the Prophet came and conquered Mecca, he fled Mecca to Rome. So this person turned away from Islam and ran away from Islam. Why? Because of the social status fell. So this is another instance of hypocrisy. It's another reason why sometimes people become hypocrites. Now, how could I relate that to us? First of all, most of us haven't become Muslim. Most of us aren't converts. So I am. But now, one thing is this. Sometimes, for the youth, it's difficult to be religious. Why is it difficult to be religious? Because people look at you funny. When you're in sixth form or high school, get the schools mixed up. When you're in these environments, if you're religious, you don't listen to music. You don't talk to girls or you don't talk to boys. You wear the hijab. You separate yourself from everything that's haram. Right? And when you do this, people look at you funny. You're not considered cool. You're not considered a person that everyone looks up to. You're outcasted. This is something that people in the West have to deal with. Muslims, young Muslims who are religious, they have to deal with this. Now, one way to combat that, one way to make this better is to create youth groups. So that's one of the things that we're trying to do here. So you see the signs M360 everywhere. This is what this group is about. We want to create an environment where the religious youth where they can meet people who are like-minded like themselves, who are religious, and they can form an identity together. So they're not outcasted in the society. They have a place that's their own. This is the importance of that group. That's why we're asking all of you to support this. Because in previous generations, you didn't have that. So those who are from previous 30 years old and raised here, if you ask them, they'll say, when I was a kid, I would hide the fact that I was a Shia in school. When I was a kid, I would hide the fact that I was religious. Because it was too difficult for me. But now, inshallah, through this group, they won't have to do that. They'll have people like themselves. They'll have a group where they can be proud of being Muslim, inshallah. Salawat ala Muhammad. Now the third and final group of hypocrites that we're going to talk about today are those that became Muslim when the Prophet ﷺ went back to Mecca. So we know the Prophet was raised in Mecca. The first 10 years of Islam, he was in Mecca. They were tortured. He migrated to Medina. Then 9 years or so afterwards, he conquered Mecca. He was able to take over Mecca again. When he conquered Mecca, the people who were in Mecca who were non-Muslim were forced to become Muslim. So these people, a lot of them, they did not like Islam at all. They didn't want to be Muslims, but they felt that they were forced to. So some people, for instance, one person that we have, Abu Sufyan, the father of Muawiyah, the grandfather of Yazid. This is one of the people. And some Sunni brothers might ask that, how dare you say that? A person, he claims to be Muslim, how dare you say that he's a hypocrite? That's haram, that's takfir, that's something terrible. But we have evidence for that. It's not something that we say just because we hate him. It's something that we say with evidence. So one small hadith I'll give you. There's a few hadiths that show this. I'll just mention one of them. It's been reported in history, in Sunni hadith and Shia, that Abu Sufyan during the third Khalifa, during the time of Uthman, he went to a graveyard, and Hamza, the uncle of the Prophet, Sayyid al-Shuhada, was buried there. So Abu Sufyan goes there and kicks his grave, disrespects his grave, and then he talks to him. He speaks to the grave. He says, "Oh Amara," Amara was Hamza's nickname. "Oh Amara, remember the government that we used to fight about? Remember the government that we tried to take over with swords? Now our youth are controlling that government. And they're playing with it like they play with a ball." Let me explain that. First of all, what is this government? The Islamic government. When the Prophet went to Medina, he established an Islamic government in Medina. The Meccans, from that moment, fought against them. The Battle of Badr, Uhud, all of these battles. They fought physically wars against Islam to try to take over their government. So Abu Sufyan was one of the heads of the Meccans who fought against Islam. He was one of the leaders at Badr. He was one of the leaders at Uhud. And he fought against Islam. He said that, remember this government that we used to fight over, which is the Islamic government. We tried to take it over with swords. But now look at it. Now it's in the hands of our youth. He was from Bani Umayyah. Abu Sufyan was from Bani Umayyah. Uthman, the Khalifa at that time, was from Bani Umayyah. Saying it's in the hands of our youth. And we're going to play with it like we play with a ball. What do you do with a ball? You pass it on to each other. So we're going to keep it in the family. This is going to be our government now. So this proves that he had animosity. He wanted to take revenge for what happened in Badr. He wanted to take revenge for what happened in Uhud. And here, when he finally got revenge, he let his true colors be known. He showed what he was all about. And there's other hadiths which are even more clear than that, where he says similar things, but saying that, he's never accepted Islam. But because the chain of narration is not as strong, I picked this one. Salawat ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. Now, hypocrites are the most dangerous enemy that we have for Islam. There's no enemy that's more dangerous than a hypocrite. Why? Because when you have an enemy who's on the outside force, you know him. You recognize him. You can plan. If he attacks this way, I'll do this. If he comes that way, I'll do that. You recognize each other. But when you have an enemy that's a hypocrite, he's within. You don't know him. He's attacking you from within and you don't know who he is. So this is more dangerous. There's a hadith that we have from the Prophet. Sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. He says this, I have never been frightened of any enemy conquering Islam, any outside force conquering Islam. Never. I only worry about one group of people. So here the Prophet is saying, any outside force, the Romans, the Persians, the Arabs, I don't worry about them. I only worry about one group. Who? Salawat ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. The unbelievers who pretend to be Muslim. This is the group he worries about. The two-faced hypocrites. They are with you in word, but they won't take one step with you. So here, the first, what he's saying is that these are the most dangerous enemy that we have. That there's no enemy more dangerous than a hypocrite. Then he gives one of their qualities. He says they're with you in word, but when it comes to action, they do nothing. So what's a clear example of that? Look at the Kufans. They sent all the letters to Imam Hussein. We're with you, we want you, come, we'll fight with you, we'll support you. But when it came down to it, when there was pressure, they all turned away. Not all of them, most of them. So here this is a clear example of those who with their mouth they say we're with you, but with their actions they're not. Now throughout the travels that I've done, I've seen other examples of this as well, to a lesser extent of course. For instance, there was one country I went to where one of the scholars, a really good scholar, was being exiled. And the Muslims, some of the Muslims supported him, but most of the Muslims wanted nothing to do with him. Even though, when I visited there, they all told me, oh, we love him, he was so great, he was the best. You know, when he left now, we're without a scholar, and we needed him, and all of this. They loved him so much. But when the time came to support him, when he needed them, they weren't there. They were scared that if they support him, the government will put pressure on their side. So they turned their backs. And it's interesting that in that city, a number of priests with their entire congregation supported him, but the majority of Muslims didn't. And that's, that's a tragedy. There was another person in my city from Los Angeles who he was being hassled by the police and the FBI. And when he was, every Muslim was scared to even mention his name. This is when I was in Qom. When I visited Los Angeles, I asked a few people, I said, what's happening with so-and-so? And every single one of them said, shh, don't talk about it. Why? Because if you talk about him, there's pressure now. If you talk about him, the FBI might come and they might hassle us. So let's leave him, let him fend for himself, we're going to turn our back. This is something that happens. And God forbid it happens to us. So it's something that, alhamdulillah, we don't experience here. But we should be prepared. If something happens to a member of our community, all of us need to support him. If he's innocent, everybody needs to support him. We never say, let him go and let him defend himself, forget about him, because if we do anything, maybe it'll be difficult for us. We always, no matter what, if someone in a community is being hassled or being oppressed, we always have to stand up and defend him. This is something that a community does. Salawat ala Muhammad wa Now the last hadith and a little explanation before we start the masab, inshallah. This one's from Imam Ali alayhi salam. He says, I warn you about the hypocrites. They are misguided and they misguide. So both they're misguided and they misguide people. Their speech is eloquent, profitable. It's even a cure for pain.
but their actions are like an incurable disease. So here, first, he's saying, I warn you against the hypocrites. So warning by Imam Ali. He's saying these people are misguided and they misguide others. Then he gives a quality. They have beautiful speech. They're eloquent. They give the best lectures. Even when you listen to them, all the pains you have are taken away. And their lectures are so powerful and so amazing that you feel at ease when you're with them. But their actions are incurable disease. I was talking with the brothers yesterday, and we were mentioning somebody, and he was someone who's a very, very, very good speaker. So inshallah, one day I could speak like him. He's an amazing speaker. But his actions are completely different. So he gives them amazing speeches on the pulpit, and then when he steps down, 100% change. And when you see this, you get upset. When you see this, the brother was saying, I go to the Majlis and mashallah, I sit there, I cry, he teaches me, but then when I spend 5 minutes with him, all of that's gone. And he said it disturbs him. And it can even take you farther away from Islam. So even if the speech helped you, his actions will hurt you more than the speech helped. There's a number of examples that one could give. But from this, I just want to make one suggestion or give a piece of advice to all of those people who have the power or the authority of inviting speakers. One thing that you should do is a little bit of research before you invite someone. Not so much, because there is a sense of tawakkul as well. But you should know at least who this person is. Is this person qualified to speak? I could give a few examples. I remember there was one person who was invited to debate an atheist. The person who was invited is a person who gives amazing lectures. His speeches are very beautiful speeches. And I'm sure if I mention his name, most of you would know him. But when he argued with this, or he debated with this atheist, he got destroyed. The atheist destroyed him. I remember I was sitting with a few brothers in Qom, we were watching this, and the arguments that he was using, we were taught in the first year of Hafid not to use these arguments because they're not strong. And these were the same arguments he was deciding to use. And then the atheist came and countered those arguments, and he had no answer for them. And we thought with ourselves, why did the holders of this debate invite this person? Yes, he gives a good speech, but everybody has their place. Now, of course, I'm not saying that this person's a hypocrite. No, he's a very good brother. But he has his place. He shouldn't be put in positions that he doesn't have the ability to handle. And that's the advice given to people who want to bring speakers or teachers or whatever the case is. You have to make sure that this person is able to handle questions from the community. That this person, when he gets off the pulpit, won't mislead the community. Because on the pulpit, usually people don't say things that are misleading. But off the pulpit with their actions, sometimes huge problems occur, which I'm sure you've witnessed in the years that you've been here. But sometimes even on the pulpit it happens as well. I'll give you another example before we move on. I remember I was listening to a speaker. Well, I like to listen to different speakers just to see their different styles. One speaker, he's well known. He's respected in some circles. He was speaking in Canada, and the speaker, he said that that execution in Islam is outdated. That the Islamic penal system is outdated. That was something for the past. But now, governments have come together and they have a better form of punishment. And Islam has to change with the times. This is a scholar speaking. It's someone who studied in Qom. It's someone who gives speeches all over the world. Now, we all know that that's ridiculous. We all know that the laws of Islam, there's hadith that we have. Halal of Muhammad, halal to the day of judgment. The haram of Muhammad is haram to the day of judgment. These laws don't change. They don't become outdated. It's clear. But unfortunately, we see this. So that's just one piece of advice. So today, what did we do? We talked about one of the reasons behind Karbala, which was uncovering the faces of the hypocrites. We looked in the Quran. We saw a verse about the hypocrites. There's a whole chapter about it you could refer to. We went over and we saw a few different groups of hypocrites, and then a few hadiths from our Masumin, inshallah. So inshallah, we all learned something, as I did, and now let's move on to the next section with 3 loud salawats ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. Now these last nights of Ashura are very difficult because the people we mention are people who are the closest to Imam Hussein. Today I want to mention 2 people because there was a little debate about the order of the Shuhada. So I'm going to mention today both Hazrat Qasim alayhi salam and Ali asghir alayhi salam. So inshallah we'll get double reward. Now first we'll mention Hazrat Qasim, the son of Imam Hassan alayhi salam. He was a child, he was young, but he was special. Now before we talk about him, there's just one point to make. Imam Hassan alayhi salam, his movement was no different than Imam Hussein's movement alayhi salam. No different at all. If Imam Hassan lived in the time of Imam Hussein, he would have done the same thing. If any Imam lived at that time in those circumstances, they would have done the same thing. And the proof of this is that the 7 of Imam Hassan's sons were in Karbala. 6 of them became shaheed on that day, and the 7th died from wounds later on. So all of his sons sacrificed themselves for Imam Hussein. This is how he raised them. This is how he told them to act. So this shows that he would have done the same. Now, when Imam Hassan alayhi salam was martyred in the year 47 or 48, he made a will to Imam Hussein alayhi salam. He said, I enjoin you, my brother, to take care of my children. Take care of them. If they do anything to upset you, forgive them and guide them to the truth. But the main thing here is take care of them. This is something that Imam Hussein alayhi salam, he cared about so much. He always made an effort to take care of the children of his brother. Now, history reports that when Imam Hassan was on his deathbed, when he was dying, after he was poisoned, Imam Hussein alayhi salam came to him and he started crying. When he saw his brother in that state, he started crying. Imam Hassan says, what are you doing? Why are you crying? Imam Hussein says, look what happened to you. What I was saying, you're looking at Imam Hassan, imagine looking at a box, what happened to him? Imam Hussein, no. Imam Hassan alayhi salam says, I've been poisoned, I'm going to die. But la yawma ka yawma ya Aba Abdullah. But there's no day like your day, oh Aba Abdullah. He gave a prediction and he said there'll be 30,000 men who are going to come. They're going to claim to be the followers of your ummah. They're going to claim to be the followers of our grandfather. But they're going to kill you. They're going to take your children prisoner. But be patient at this time. At this time, the Bani Umayyah will be cursed. At this time, the sky will rain blood. Now let's go to the night of Ashura. When Imam Hussein alayhi salam was in the tent talking to the companions, he gathered the soldiers, he gathered everyone, and he said what he said. Everyone knows what he said. The soldiers stood up expressing their loyalty and their desire to give themselves, to sacrifice their all for him on the next day. There were a few children present in that meeting. They were sitting, they were watching. One of them was Qasim. Qasim was thinking to himself, am I going to get the opportunity as well? Am I also going to be able to sacrifice myself for Imam Hussein? He goes and he asks Imam Hussein this. He says, "Oh uncle, my dear uncle, am I going to be able to become shaheed tomorrow as well? Is this going to be, something that's going to happen?" Imagine what Imam Hussein says here. Imam Hussein is thinking, imagine what he's thinking. He's thinking, on one side I have to protect him. On the other side he wants to become shaheed. What should I do? He asks him a question. He says, "Qasim, what do you think of death?" Qasim said, "Death to me is sweeter than honey." On the day of Ashura, he readies himself. He prepares himself for war, Qasim. He goes to his uncle Imam Hussein and he tells him, "I want to go." Imam Hussein hugs him. They cry. There's some sources that say Imam Hussein fell down. He couldn't say. He fell down out of grief. And it took him a while to give permission, but finally he did. Assalamu alayka ya Aba Abdullah. Assalamu alayka ya ibn Rasulullah. Assalamu alayka ya ibn Fatima al-Zahra. Assalamu alayka ya ibn Ali al-Murtada. Qasim, he went into the battle. He was so small that there was no armor that could fit him. So he went with a normal shirt. His sandals were even broken. He just went to do what he could do to defend his uncle. When he went and he faced the enemy, he said, "I'm the son of Hassan, if you don't know me, the grandson of the messenger of Allah, the chosen, the trusted. Hazrat Hussein, this is Hussein. He's held in ransom for people whose thirst will never be quenched even by the rain." When one of the enemies, he relates the story. He says when Qasim went in front of the army, he said that one of the enemies, by the name of Amr ibn Sa'ad al-Azdi, he said, "Let me attack this boy. I want to make life miserable for him. Why? This little boy, why?" But he said, "Let me attack him." He attacks him. He strikes him. Qasim calls, screams, "Ya Hussein! Ya Abdullah!" And Imam Hussein said he swoops in as an eagle after his prey. He runs, he runs in and he strikes Amr. And when he strikes him, a huge commotion erupts. Dust comes up. When the dust settles, the horses have trampled all of the body. Qasim was on the floor, trampled by horses. Imam Hussein sits next to him. He says, "This is very difficult for your uncle. For you to cry for him, for you to ask him and he can't respond. And if he responds, but he's not able to help you." He takes his body back to the tent and lays it next to Ali Akbar. But that's not the last child that was sacrificed on this day. We see that there's another child, a very small infant. After Abbas sacrificed himself, Imam Hussein went to the tent and took his infant, who was so thirsty, his lips were moving like a fish out of water. He takes his infant, he brings him in front of the enemy, he holds him, he says, "Look, if it's me that you want to kill, what has this child done? What has this infant done? What has he done to deserve this? Please just give him some water." How much water would he have needed? 3 drops? 4 drops? How much? But the enemy, the words of Imam Hussein must be so strong, because the enemy, the leaders of the enemy, they call over Harmula. Harmula is the same person, it's the same person who shot the arrow into the water pouch that Abbas was carrying. And this time they asked him to shoot the neck of Ali Akbar, and he agreed. He takes the arrow. He pulls it back. He shoots the arrow. It hits the neck of Ali Akbar. Imam Hussein feels Ali Akbar shaking in his hands. It said his hands are flapping like wings. And the blood is flowing. Allahumma al'anakum li-zalimeen. Allah